Hello and welcome back for whatever part this is. I keep promising that pop-up message as the next part, but as I haven't really planned this, we are going to wing it as we move along, and I keep coming up with new ideas. So last video we sort of injected this extra layer between the view models and my data access, and the structure is okay, but I think I want to rename the naming a bit, because this here is basically my domain layer. It's supposed to be, so that's where all the relevant business objects and rules are. Everything my customer requires here are the rules. So this layer here is sort of the foundation of everything, and the only thing that can be expanded upon but shouldn't really be changed or swapped out that much. So it's supposed to be the most stable thing in the system, the part that changes the least. The data access down here, currently it's called model, but I want to rename that to data access because that's what's going on. That can be swapped out, as I've talked about before, to a database or something other than just a binary file. The entire UI is JavaFX, but could be swapped out with a web interface or Swing or whatever. But this part here, that's supposed to be fixed. And what I have learned from looking at a few other architecture design approaches, this here is called the domain layer. So we rename that, and it contains the rules and the business objects, and to do is a business object, so I want that to go in here. And the intention is that this layer depends on nothing but itself, and then other layers can depend on it. So currently I have a dependency here, or an association going outward, and that is often fixed by moving the interface, saying this interface here is something that the domain layer requires. So we put that up here, and then my data access can then have this dependency going into the domain. So now nothing points out of the domain and things point into the domain. And I believe this is what Robert C. Martin talks about when he talks about his clean architecture in a small toy example. I'm using packages. He would probably tell me to use different modules. So I have everything in one module. I could have split things out. So I have a UI module and a domain module and a data access module and so on. So if we just refactor things so that it's called domain factoring. Yeah. I want this here to be called data access. I want this here to be called domain. So that's the packages. I want the to-do item here that goes into the domain. Yeah, refactor. And also the to-do data access also goes in here. So minor rearrangement of things. I haven't changed any functionality. It's just supposed to be a slightly better design. So everything in here is supposed to be more static and not change. This can be changed out, this can be changed out. So we still have time for that to do. My to-do logic implementation here can throw some exceptions. The to-do file service can throw some exceptions, and we need to handle those in my controllers or view models. I think I'm going to handle them in the controllers for the most part. So whenever we add a new to-do here, you can see we get something printed out, because I might get an exception if I try to create a to-do which has no invalid data. So if I don't set the owner, or if I don't set the text or description, then I get an exception. And currently I'm just printing out a stack trace, and obviously that's, it's a good idea so that I can see something went wrong, but the user doesn't get any error message, and I want to show a pop-up to say to the user, your data was not saved. And then they can consider what to do about it, depending on whatever error message I give them. So I want to show a to-do message, not a to-do message, some kind of pop-up, or sometimes it's called a toast. So how do we do that? Well, I have, I believe, previously mentioned making the view handler responsible for creating a new stage and just showing that, and I guess we could do that. But I also believe there's a new there's some dialog options in JavaFX. So let's just try and copy paste something that I found on the internet. Alert type. Not entirely sure what we're doing here, but it seems that I can pass in, a bunch of actions. So this is a confirmation asking you, do you want to proceed? But I want an error, and the message is probably this. So let's just say e.message, and I need a button type, I don't know, close, and I think I can delete these. Yeah, so I can just add a couple of buttons, however many I want. We can see that it has a ... here. That means I can keep adding buttons, and then the buttons will be arranged in this alert. So I have no idea how this works, but let's give it a go and see what happens. We run it, and I will go and try and add some class not found exception. Interesting. That's okay. So I moved the class of the to-do here. That means the entire name of the class is going to be called todoapp.domain.todo, and my file here contains a class called model, todoapp.model.todo. So it's two different classes, even though they look very much the same. That's why binary is sometimes a bit inconvenient, because you have to match the specific class. Alternatively, I should have used JSON. That's a way to convert objects. JSON like this. I think in Java there's something called JSON, a library to convert this. I'll probably look into this in a later video. Let's just add a note here. At some point I'm going to make a Trello board with my ideas so we can keep track of things and organize it and prioritize. But the point is just that I'm trying to load the wrong types of files. If I delete this, what happens then? Will my, save delete, do refactor. My data access here is going to still say well, the file doesn't exist, so we're going to seed it with these basic ones. Okay, so basically I deleted my entire database, which is not all that great. So yeah, maybe that speaks to a poor design using binary files, but that can be swapped out later. Let's try and run it again and see what happens. Okay, I want to add a new to-do. We say okay, and I actually get an error, and owner cannot be empty. Okay, I do get all this stuff printed out, and maybe that seems a bit over aggressive, since I'm basically handling the error correctly now. So I think I'm going to just remove the stack trace. another approach is to use some kind of logging functionality that will output the errors to a file, but this is not really an error. I think those logging functionalities should be reserved for when your system sort of crashes. This is just data validation when your user does not insert what we expect it to. So I'm going to try again, tools. I should still get that pop-up saying description cannot be empty. Okay, so I'm not taking to the list view until I insert something correct. So my to-do here should be insert something correct, and well, that worked, so I can say that's now done. Yeah, I need to also have that piece of code in the update, because my update here, but I can get the same kind of mistake when if I modify an existing to-do and delete the owner or delete the description. So that's going to require the same kind of response here. I don't have any other buttons, do I? Not yet. That requires some kind of error handling. I think the next step is going to be making sure that I can delete to-dos. I want another button out here. So let's just try and edit something and see if I can, if I remove the owner, I should get an error message, owner cannot be empty. Wonderful. Now it's my responsibility to pet the dog today. Okay, that works. Let's mow the lawn. But we want to remove that and save, and description cannot be empty. So I just cancel, and that is interesting. So what happened? Why did the cancel button do that? Update controller cancel. Oh. I'm trying to say vm.save. So what happens? I have set that. Oh, I set this. So I take the to-do that is loaded, and that's a specific to-do in the list. That to-do is actually down here in a list down here. Yep. So I do actually, I did make a weak attempt at fixing that, saying that I have the list of to-dos held in memory. Whenever I get all, I am, well, I'm creating a new list, but I am still referencing the same to-do objects. So I do modify the to-do objects that's in this list here, even though I'm not modifying this list specifically. And that means if I press cancel, it was empty, and if I then later add a new to-do, that to-do is going to save the changes. So, well, instead of keeping everything in a list, and when we open things, I don't want to do this. And here we need a new list. Let's just try this out. So the idea is that instead of keeping everything in a list, I'm going to work a bit more with the file, so nothing is stored in memory. It's not as optimal, but that should fix my problem. And here we want to return the list, return list, return list. And that means, okay, so read objects and again return list. So instead of updating a field variable, we have things to interact with the file. So save changes, that's going to be complicated. Okay, let's start with get one. I want to read from file. That's now going to return to me a list. So I'm basically reading all objects in that file, reading the entire database and looking for that one. Okay, get all. Well, that's going to be the same thing. Maybe down here, instead of read from file, I want to say get all. Or, right, instead of duplicating code, maybe I'm going to rework how that works. But now I can get all and then get a specific one. If I want to delete something, my save changes is then going to have is going to need a list to save. So save changes takes a list and puts that list into the file. Save changes, I get a list. Okay. What other kind of problems do we have? We have the add. Well, that's going to go through the list again. So we say get all. Again, loading the entire database. And I'm going to call this list. Yeah. And we're going to do the same thing down here. Update. Well, I have to get all, then I have to find the one that we're looking for. And yeah. Okay, so I'm not keeping anything in memory anymore. I can remove the constructor. And we are working a lot more with the list. The get all, that should, instead of reading from a file, we should check if read from file. Maybe I want to rename this to read to-dos, because then we can go and say there's a path file.file the new file with that path. So we want to do the same thing as in the constructor. Check if the file exists, then I want to do that. Otherwise, file exists. Else, then we do the seeding. Seed, and that going to return a list, not list one. So that seems fair. Let's just see if that fixed anything. I should probably add some testing, automated testing to this. You haven't learned about unit tests yet in the course, probably, depending on when you watch this video, but that would be a good idea at some point. Pet the dog, okay. Remove that. I cannot save the changes. We press cancel. Pet the dog is still there. Okay, so that's because when I open this view here, we are going to ask for get all, and that's going to read from the file instead of getting that list that we had here. So I think that is going to be enough for this video. I can show a pop-up dialog whenever I make a mistake, whenever my domain layer says you are trying to violate some of the logic rules that my customer put in place. Simple as they are, they're still rules. The point is just we can add this we can expand with more rules in this layer here. So I think that's enough for now, and in the next part of the video, let us make the option of deleting a to-do. Alright, thank you for watching. See you in the next part.